Good morning. Welcome to the Countless Vlogcast. I'm your host, Justin Rich. My guest today is Stephanie Barr, author. Bring her in, talk her latest books, latest projects. Hope you guys enjoy the show. Good morning, Stephanie. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. So, give us a little background about yourself.
I am a rocket scientist. That's been my day job since I was 20 years old. And I'm a single mother of two children. And I have a bunch of cats. And I like to write novels and short stories.
So, when did you get into writing? When did you start writing? Like, maybe because all authors and writers they do like a lot of like this like plain writing, freestyle writing. But when did you get serious about writing? To when did you find yourself ready to like publish and like take that next step to like professionalism?
I actually got some short stories published and poetry published when I was in college and before then. But I wasn't really. It was. I started out writing poetry when I was in high school. Which is a good way to learn language. And then I started writing short stories really more in college, and I moved from one to the other. All right, Twilight. And then I wrote my first novel in my 20s, and then my second novel in my 20s. But that novel got redone, and done again. And I tried to market those in short stories all during my 20s. Marketing is not my strong suit. I love to tell stories. I hate to sell stories, but I love to tell them. And then I ended up my second marriage in my 30s. My first husband was not encouraging. My second husband loved this stuff. Still does. Still big fan. And I ended up writing 3 or 4 novels when I was married to him in my 30s. And then after we divorced, I decided that there was no sense keeping all those stories in a virtual drawer, that I was going to publish them one way or the other. And so I started publishing them.
Great. So, what is your genre of choice, and how did you come to like find that genre?
I write fantasy and science fiction. Science fiction is partially because I absolutely love science as a rocket scientist, and I know a good bit about it. And part of it is I grew up on fairy tales and mythology all the time that I was growing up, and I really love playing with those things. And I love that fantasy gives you so many options for things that you can do that are different. You know, the things that you want, wish fulfillment, if you'd like. I I started writing fantasy because I read a book called Sword and Sorceress that was edited by Marion Zimmer Bradley, and there was a short story in there by Jennifer Roberson called "Spoils of War." And the story just blew my mind. It was so good. It's still one of my favorite fantasy short stories of all time. And so I really wanted to get into that anthology. So I wrote a bunch of fantasy short stories. And then I wrote off those fantasy short stories. So that ended up sort of driving me toward that direction, fantasy. And my first novel was based on one of the short stories I wrote to try and get into that anthology. And then I've written several fantasy novels since then.
So, what's your recent project you've published?
I recently published Add a Cup of Chaos. And Add a Cup of Chaos was again something that came from a short story. I wrote a short story, and when I sat down to write the short story, it was just supposed to have a witch. That's pretty much the only criteria I had. And I didn't want to do your typical, really pretty sort of sexy sort of witch. So I had a dumpy 40-year-old witch gathering herbs in a graveyard. And then I threw a young demon in there who was escaping an angry mob. And then I ended up with a very complex backstory about a war between humans and demons. And a demon that comes to confront her on having stolen his son, as he sees it. and she ends up being whisked off to the demon world. And the demon world was so much fun to write. It was so interesting. They were just throwing in all kinds of technical, magical technical details. And when I was through with the short story, I just loved the world that I'd created, so I had to write a whole novel about it. But you have to add something to make it more interesting. So I have the same characters from the book, but they're side characters. From the short story, they're side characters. And then I have new main characters. And then I threw an alien invasion for Earth, where the only chance they had to survive the alien invasion was demons coming in to help, which isn't so likely when you're at war with them. So that's where Add a Cup of Chaos came in.
So when you're creating these stories, do you create the world first? Do you create characters first?
Characters.
Or do you get there?
Characters.
Mm-hmm.
Always characters. I love characters. And character will come to mind, start taking on dimension, and then I build the world to match so that I can show them off.
Would you consider yourself more of a pantser writer or a plotter? Because when you're doing character building, I know it could be tough too, and you want to make. Because sometimes writers you want to make it like perfect. But would you say you're more a pantser or a plotter? Do you like
total pantser?
Yeah, you sit, okay, I was gonna say, do you sit there and like write a character out, or you just like on and off?
And Add a Cup of Chaos was, I was only in some places I was only a couple paragraphs ahead of myself, and I completely threw myself off several times where I didn't see that coming. So, and no, I'm a pantser.
So, as a writer, what makes you unique in your style of writing?
I really am focused on characters. Characters to me are the reason for a story. Having a character, showing off a character, points of view, and growth. All of those I think are really important. And I like interaction of characters. It's my favorite part. I just love dialogue and having characters learn from each other and grow together. And that's totally what I love doing best. And my readers have told me consistently that that's what they like best.
Okay, so who were some of your influences in terms of other authors and writers that inspire your writing, or if any?
Oh, I had tons of writers. I mean, I read everything when I was growing up, and I'm still a very eclectic reader. To me, it's all about characters. It doesn't have to be a particular genre. So I read Shakespeare and Poe, a lot of your, you read lots of different things when you're in school, and if I found an author that I liked, I would go and read them to exhaustion. I read Robert Heinlein and Stephen King and Robert Ludlum. I like his adventure and his streak of romantic thinking that goes into his books. Georgette Heyer was a favorite author. Dorothy Sayers. She wrote some mystery novels, the only mystery novels that I've really enjoyed. Nora Roberts, just James Clavell. I love Shogun. James Michener. I mean, just everything. Different characters, different interactions, seeing how they get together. I love bringing cultures together. I love seeing how people work together or don't work together, and how that changes things. I like to read different authors that have different strengths so that I can absorb different things and learn things that I don't want to do. I mean, when you're young, you read good and bad novels. The bad novels became lessons in things I didn't want to do.
So speaking of things you don't like to do, you talked earlier about marketing too. So you take the self-publishing route or the publishing route, the old school route too, or do you self-publish?
I self-publish, yes.
Okay, so what is your method of branding, promoting yourself?
Well, I probably do most of my marketing through Facebook. I make sure that I have good covers, so I don't do them. I work with other people that I know that are independent writers that for good blurbs, good thinking, um, try and appeal to my strengths. I have cats and dragons in all of my books. That's one of my signatures. And so that's my Facebook group is Cats and Dragons. And I try and focus on what my strengths are, humor and characters and not being surprised. And I like intelligent characters. My characters tend to be on the smart side, because that's what I know. And I have a tendency toward characters that have to handle really tough problems and they have to outsmart problems. So I have a lot of problems that require outsmarting, either bad guys or situations or struggles or technical problems, things of that sort.
So, who is your audience tailored to?
They're tailored to people like me, people who like characters, and people who like smart characters. People who have a sense of humor and aren't settling for a particular genre. They want it all. They want adventure, and they want humor, and they want technical detail, and they want good people in there, and everything else.
So from reading like reviews and talking with your audience members, do they get what you're trying to say when you're writing, like from like feedback? Do you think like when you're like writing, I know it was like authors we write for ourselves too and our audience too, but do you feel like you're writing they connect with you through your words and like they get what you're trying to say, or is it like they have their own like take on it?
I think they do. I think that they do come away with an understanding of what I am trying to say. Like I often talk about how important who you are is versus what you are. And I think that most of the people who read my book walk away with understanding that. They're either sympathetic to it in the beginning, which is nice, or they're more open to that notion when they leave.
Okay, cool. So how does the quarantine affect your creativity? For instance, like the beginning of it too to now too. Did you find yourself writing more in the beginning or like less, or how was it for you?
When I write, I'm really kind of have to be inspired, and then I'll just sit there and put hours worth of writing in at a time. And I happen to be inspired for Add a Cup of Chaos right at the beginning of the quarantine. It is challenging because I have two children who have been at home with me during the day. I also work during the day since April. So it's harder to find time that I can devote to writing that isn't constantly interrupted. But aside from that, it really hasn't changed anything. I've always worked with distractions. I'm used to it. I'm the oldest of 7 children, so if it's total silence, I'm actually, it's really hard for me to write and get into the mode.
So what is your next project you're working on, and what are some goals, maybe in terms of marketing or like learning different things in the writing process?
I'm involved in a number of anthologies with other authors where I'm hoping I'll pick up some tricks of the trade when it comes to marketing. The next one the first deadline that's coming up is one that's a charity anthology for Black Lives Matter. And so I'm working on a short story for that. And then I have other ones that involves demons, so I'll probably use a couple characters from Add a Cup of Chaos. And Shifters, I have another cat anthology. I've got written a cat anthology, an anthology of cat stories. And I've got another one coming that will have multiple authors writing cat stories. So short stories of various different mindsets and things. Let me see if I can find
So
a list.
what motivates you and prevents you from getting typecast in your writing?
Oh, well, I'm never the same. I uh, I have I have a friend that described me once. They said that everything sounds distinctly like me, but nothing sounds the same.
Wow.
So apparently, I'm pretty weird. I've got a lot of
Nothing wrong with it. Weird is good.
there's lots of weirdness left too. Because when I was growing up, I remember whenever I'd read a book on writing, I'd end up getting bored because the first 2/3 of it is how to get an idea, and I'm like, that's not my problem. Uh, if I used every idea that I've had so far, I'd be writing for the next 4 or 5 lifetimes, and I expect to get more. So that's not a problem for me.
So final question. This is like shift gears transition. That was a good transition there. Give advice out there to young authors out there and authors struggling.
I think one of the hardest things when you're first starting out is to balance listening to what people say because that's important. You very rarely have it all handled when you get started. And keeping track of what it is that you want it to be, your voice, your intent, your stuff. I know a lot of people on their first books got talked into things that they really weren't happy about. And 15 years later, they're rewriting the book the way they'd intended to at the time. Don't forget who you are. Don't forget your name is on the book. You have to be happy with it. If you read the book and you don't like it, you didn't do it right. It needs to be yours. It needs to be what you want to say because we've already got what other people want to say out there. Make it yours.
Awesome. This is your chance to plug yourself to social media, websites. Where can people find you and support you?
I am on Facebook. I think I'm Stephanie568. I also have a group called Cats and Dragons. That's a fan group. You can find me on Amazon. You can find me on Smashwords. And in fact, Smashwords is a good place to go for my books because I have little mini anthologies that go with almost every book, some short stories that are like introductions to the book. And those are free on Smashwords, where Amazon makes me charge 99 cents. I have a website called Stephanie E. Barr, all one word, .us. And you can find all my books there. And I'm on Twitter, but I don't Twitter much. I don't tweet much.
Yeah, Twitter is an interesting world.
Yeah, it's confusing for me, and also I'm really hard for me to talk in small bits. I like to talk.
Yeah, Facebook seems like the best option, like for like authors to get their messages out there, like you were saying in the beginning.
Right. Say who you are and establish it and find like-minded folks. Um, Plus, there's lots of cat pictures, and that's important. If you are into cats and dragons, I can find both of those on Facebook pretty easily.
Right. Well, all right, Stephanie. Thank you for coming on, sharing your story. It's been awesome.
Thank you for the opportunity.
And thank you guys for watching the Countless Vlogcasts with my guest, Stephanie Barr, author. Make sure you guys support her on Facebook, Instagram, and her website. And thank you guys for watching. Have a good day.
You too. Bye-bye.